Okay, good. So, and you're attached to Jeddore? So, welcome everyone to this special jointly hosted seminar between the Departments of Geography and Biology. Before I introduce some more folks here, I would like to just take a moment to acknowledge that the territory in which we gather is the ancestral homelands of the Beothuk, and the Newfoundland Island as the ancestral homelands of the Beothuk and the Mi'kmaq. I would also like to recognize the Inuit of Nunatsiavut and Nunatsiavut and the Innu of the Sinan and their ancestors as the original peoples of Labrador. We strive for respectful relationships with all peoples on this land as we search for collective healing, true reconciliation, and honor this beautiful land and its waters together. So I would like to introduce the Dean of the Department of Geography, Dr. Aaron Keeling, to talk about our speakers.
Thank you. You'll never know that I was actually, I did lighting for one of my high school plays, but you never know it, right? Let me go back to where we were. I thought that just controlled this, so my apologies. Yes, I'm the head, actually, of the Department of Geography. My name's Aaron Keeling, and it's a great pleasure to introduce this afternoon of events featuring distinguished guests from the Algonquin First Nation who've traveled all the way here, drove up yesterday to share with us some of their insights, activities, and wisdom regarding Indigenous-led conservation here in the Mi'kmaq and the island of Newfoundland. And we do have both we have two guests, one of whom is going to be at least leading us off and starting us now. This is a sort of a two-part event, as some of you may know. We have the seminar here called Land Needs Guardians, and then afterwards, our guests will be hosting a workshop on Indigenous-led conservation and protected area strategies in conjunction with it's conservation biology, right? With Dr. Evan Edinger's conservation biology course. So credit to Evan for really organizing this event. Thanks to all the support in the Department of Geography and the support of Scholarship in the Arts Fund, which has helped make this visit possible. So I'm very pleased to introduce our first speaker today, Jeddore, who works as Forestry and Natural Resources Manager for Mi'kmaq First Nation. And we may, if we're lucky, be joined by Chief Michelle Joe as well, who is en route from some other off-site appointments. You might make this, if not, we certainly will be part of the workshop. And we're really, really happy and honored to have both of these distinguished guests here. So without further ado, let's welcome Jeddore.
it. Thank you for having me here. Quay. Good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. People in live streaming. It's an honor to come here to give you a little bit of information on what GEOG First Nations is doing within their own territory over the last number of years, and what the chief is planning on doing over the next year as he looks into retirement soon. He's at an age in his career he feels it's almost time to put the reins down and let somebody else take over. So, but he's had another engagement. He has a dentist appointment. It was early, but he's hoping to get out from that. But if not, as usual, he says, "Greg, you can do it." So I think some doing more things often, and hopefully tries to get out some of the wisdom that he tries to share. So that you must know the chief very well, and based not showing up, and not even strange that he gets calling on other important topics and issues as different departments of the government. So a little background on myself. I am Jeddore. I work with the GEOG First Nations. I am the manager for natural resources. I've been there for the last 20 years. I started out with when the project started back in 2001. Was more of a silviculture tending program and a Christmas tree farming. So we used to sell Christmas trees that were right across Newfoundland. We couldn't get into the bigger markets because Nova Scotia and the United States kind of took over that. So we were just kind of trying to supply the trees here in Newfoundland. So over the years, my job has increased, taking natural resources to a whole new level. From there to developing programs for youths, elders, looking at training into the likings, species at risk, looking at soil samples, climate change, and also recently we just started to get into marine protected areas with the federal government, with DFO. So my job increased there in those different levels of working with universities, colleges, pretty much across Canada. Also, I am part of a joint working group that is the Guardian Initiative across Canada, that we're the importance of guardians on the land within their own territories. So we're working with the federal government, looking at building programs that would last for the next 10, 20 years and beyond, with having guardians on their lands to be trained, doing their traditional knowledge ways, and plus Western science ways. So we have a large funding agreement with the federal government that came out this year, so which was a very exciting moment for the Guardian program. And it is continuing to grow, and it's good to see that everybody has the same interests as Indigenous and non-Indigenous on the land that will be protected or preserved for generations to come. So I have a little video that the chief was going to do on his first starting up top that he wanted to do. Working with Parks Canada, Chris up here has helped put together a clip that the chief was going to show you guys. It's like a legacy for me to help him to before he retired in the video. The audio is, if you can't hear, let me know, and that way it's going to give you details of how our ancestors traveled over the land for thousands of years. So, let me get into the video.
is Lizelle Joe. I've been the chief sagamore for going on 30 years or so, I guess. And I've left this community when we had nothing at all, very little, and come back to beginning of a community in motion.
My name is Jeddore. I'm from the Mi'kmaq First Nation. I was raised as a Mi'kmaq person. I went away to school when I was at a young age. Came back and gave back to my community and did natural resources conservation for 2 years. Started working with the chief over the last number of years, gained a lot of knowledge and experience, and my career moved in a whole different way, I guess, as I found being on the land and being a part of Mother Nature and brought me back to where I came from.
My name is Billy Joe, and I'm the canoe builder here. Just been working on this canoe with me and Derek Stride.
We continue now with a tradition our people done years ago now, and it was a lost tradition. Now it's been back for about over 20 years. Got a chief and Billy. Hopefully it keeps going for another 100 years.
This canoe is roughly around 18 feet, and she's built from all the materials gathered here on the highland. It's all spruce root. The bark is from here on the highland, so she's 100% highland built.
Well, maybe we can build a canoe and take it upriver, following an old traditional route that our people used years ago, up to Mitchell's Pond, and then a short portage and go down the river.
On the route is going to come from Medonians. We're going to leave from Mi'kmaq First Nation, and from there we'll travel out through and get up to Newton, Mitchell's, and eventually down through Terranova, Duffy's, and Sandy Pond. So the route is 164 kilometers long.
Every canoe we build is special to us, but and they're not all the same. We don't try to replicate the first one. We just let it happen. Whatever shape comes in, we have shape in mind when we start. We go as close to that, but sometimes the barks are different, and we end up with a canoe in the end.
Oh, my granddaughter loves it. She's 7 years over now, and she wants to build a canoe with me now, but she's too young to be at knives or anything. But I told her when she gets older, she can handle life safely, then we'll build our own canoe. And she's excited about that.
You take all the rivers and streams that flow through the land. It's like the bloodlines that feeds every ecosystem throughout the territory and all Newfoundland. They're the ones that bring in nourishment to everything to make everything flourish that would last for generations to come. And if you destroy those bloodlines and start interrupting the flow, things will start dying off in certain ecosystems. And that's what it's all about. We're trying to preserve Mother Nature's bloodlines.
I think we've been building a community building context, educating ourselves, educating the outside world on what we're all about. This is, to me, is a part of education, a part of knowledge that people need to know about us and who we are as Mi'kmaq people.
We'll be going up the river, traveling up and up, until we reach up to the halfway mark of 75 kilometers. And then once we get to that point, we'll be starting hitting the level of the land, and then we'll start going down towards Terranova, all the way to Birch Bark Canoe.
I'm 74 years old, and next year when we make it, so I'm 75. I'm at the end of my career as a chief in the community. And it's, I think it's a fitting way to say goodbye to that. It's emotional and spiritual all at the same time. to be out on the land with a bunch of younger people and my brother. That's a pretty special moments along the way, I'm sure.
So you see here, this is how the river goes. And as you can imagine, once you're up at top, and then the water starts to turn again. So, and then you start coming down with the river. So when you get down, you're entering into Hatterdale territory, entering to Terra Nova. And that's going to be a nice journey, not only for me and our community, but it shows the way of our life.
Well, let's make sure we take a ride into the park, and we will connect our territory to the park, and in that way, so we're bridging the two together. The canoe becomes a part of the park's connection to our people there in the river. And when visitors come from around the world, that story could be told. And what better way of doing it than doing it in a traditional way like our people would have done 200 years ago. When you want to go somewhere on the land, they wouldn't necessarily walk all day. If they can paddle the canoe much faster and do it, that's what they would do, and that's what we're doing.
This is our home, this is our backyard, and all these rivers and lakes that connect together, that's the blood veins, and that's the vessels that connects everything from us to the outside world and to the land where we came from.
It's an honor and a privilege to be able to build what my ancestors built 100 years ago.
I think our ancestors are smiling.
It's going to be exciting. It's going to be like a step back in time.
That's our journey, and we welcome you to be part of it. And it's going to be a part of an historical moment of how the Aboriginal people live off the land, conserve the land for generations to come.
So this is the canoe trip that if the chief was here, he would be speaking to you about on his journey this spring. Hopefully that winter will be a good one, so we will have a good runoff in the spring in order to do it in May or June. But if we do not have a good winter as we did last year, it will be pushed later into fall. Because in the fall year we've gone into rainy season, and so that's what he wanted to share with you guys today. His moments, I guess, as you heard in the video, that he's at a point in his career where he's planning on retiring, and this is one thing we wanted to do for him before he does that, is to have the opportunity, like his ancestors and his fathers and his grandfathers done over hundreds of years, to travel over the land by canoe. So throughout the journey through the land canoe, well, as we from the Donianics, we will paddle the traditional route that they used years and years ago. Also my father used as well when he trapped, when he left GEOG First Nations. He would travel into Middleridge in the interior with my uncle, and they would trap for a couple months at that time. Instead of coming back home, he would travel across the land to Glenwood, or he would continue before the highway came in. I think it was just a railroad bed then, or before that. He would have traveled right to St. John's here to trade their furs as well, and then come back on the coastal boats. So that was their journey over the land with canoes. My father has a canoe here in the rooms that he built before his passing in 83, 82. It's a caribou skin canoe that he built, is here on display. So it shows how we adapted and how we used the land for our survival and protecting the land at the same time, only taking what we needed from it to survive. And the territory that we're doing is on the unceded territory that nobody has stepped on, and it's that way for generations. It's because industry hasn't been in there, mining hasn't been in there. Some of it is under the Bay North Wilderness Protected Area, but with the agreements with the province, the MUN First Nation still practice their indigenous rights on the land by doing their trapping as well, and have their trappers cabin. Along the river system with what the chief will do, we have identified some historical sites along the way. There's a wigwam there that's built at a birch bark. It's still standing. That is part of what you will see on this journey. In other areas along the river is a stump that is close to the river bank that has a carving of an Indian head with the dressing that is along the river system. And also there's old wigwams and lean-tos that they use that when back in they never had the cabins. They use side camps and what we call lean-tos and also wigwams. So all of them are scattered all throughout the territory when you go across. But doing this historical moment with him, as he is like a father to me, he took me in when my father passed away when I was a little boy, and I learned from him. I shot my first caribou with him, I skinned my first caribou with him, tamed my first hide with him. He taught me a lot over the years along with my little brother. But getting him back on the land and traveling over next spring is a moment that I would cherish, and that we will document that journey from the day we leave. We're looking at 12 days to do the journey. So that's covered in 164 kilometers of river. So we will connect Jeddore with that partnership we had with Jeddore First Nations. So if the chief was there, he'd probably get more in depth and share more emotions for him. But for me is to, if you do decide to retire, you'll leave another legacy behind for the community and for everybody to share. So, we invite guests to come and join on the canoe trip if you wish, or eventually you will see a video as this one when he has completed his journey. So that is would be his talk, and so if you have any questions on the clip of what he's planning on doing, I can answer them to the best of my knowledge, what he might say. But he would probably say a great job. I'll leave it to you guys if you have a question. Okay, Chief, you're good. You don't have to say nothing. Okay, so this is a presentation I put together. It does with the, I don't know why I up there, the screen. It's on traditional lands and a marine use study report that we did for the province that we're looking at entering a forest management agreement with. This will be the first of its kind on this far east, and it will be the indigenous-led forest management agreement that would be different from an industry agreement. So we'll go through this and I'll give you an idea of the size of maps, what's in here. And where would I can make this go? Cool. Okay. So, this is my report. So, the first slide shows you an idea of the forest management area. This is the forest management area in central Newfoundland. It covers over 466,000 hectares. So these are within MFN's traditional territory. So this, working with the province, we are working towards a forest management agreement over these districts. FMA area number 2, 4, 6, and 7. So over the last number of years within this area, we have been doing scientific studies with Millway First Nations Natural Resources staff, along with the University of Guelph, in our can with Andre Arsenal, Parks Canada as well, and CPODs. So we have a wide variety of partnerships, and a lot of our funding coming through this is coming from the federal government under the ECC program. So all of this happening is being done by not the core funding that is there for the community. It's coming from outside funding. So this is hopefully in the weeks to come that the province will sign an agreement with Millway First Nation to start our first 5 years of planning for these districts. If we will not have them divided into different numbers, it will be just one district. So that will be our forest management area that is indigenous led. So being part of industry as to voluntarily set aside protected areas within your FMA. MFN is the same way. We are doing the same thing. We are setting aside areas within the FMA to be IPCAs, Indigenous Protected Conserved Areas for us. Our areas will take in a lot of different features, that is species at risk, indigenous cultural areas, sacred areas, burial ground areas. So everything will come into a different FMA than it would be with the province, because it will be an indigenous FMA. So it's going to be like if you kind of look at it in a 2ICN, it's going to be with strict science, still staying within the legislation, but also is looking at the values of Millway First Nations and our traditional values on the lands that will be taken into account. But keeping in mind that we still will be a processing company, like for collecting timber to process for the longhouses, for the canoe building, for the snowshoe making as well. So all the non-timber products holds a lot of values for First Nations people, as we use the non-timber values for our traditional value ways, that for our basket making and our dream catchers, and for, as you see with the canoe, we're using the birch bark and roots to develop our canoes. So we have a wider scope in an industry to look at non-timber values, but very important values. We look at carbon migration. We did routes for how the caribou has migrated over the last number of years. We've seen caribou adapted to predators that is new to the island, which would be coyotes. If you look in Yellowstone Park, buffalo, the buffalo will go in a circle. You will do a circle to put all the young and the older buffalo inside to protect them from the predators outside. We have captured that on the video with the caribou and adapted the same way as the buffalo. So they have put all their youngs in the hole in the circle, and the strong ones out in front to defend off the prey. So the animals are adapting to the change, and also we're adapting to the change. And you know, climate is happening, and it's happening fast. And there's something that, you know, Mother Nature needs our help to help to protect our species and our way of life. So when we did a study, we went out, we looked at different areas and different species we were finding. So we found the white pine tree stands throughout our territory, and a lot of the white pines was never studied in central Newfoundland. It was more eastern and western that was doing more studies on the white pine. But white pines for the indigenous community is that we use them for building canoes. So they're very light and flexible and easy to chisel or burn. So we've been finding stands that are very close to rivers that are like 250 to 500 in a stand. And Andre Arsenault at Inarakan, he has the oldest pine on the west coast in the Torngat Mountains. It's over 300 and some odd years old, but we're trying to beat that record. We got some older pine in western Newfoundland in our territory. So and then over the number of years, we've been doing carbon studies as well. So we've been going on the land in the summertime, in the fall, and the winter, following the herds that are passing through that's getting into the calving grounds and the winter grounds. Over the last number of years that we've been monitoring the caribou, we have seen an increase in the caribou numbers due to the fact that they have adjusted to the predators that came to Newfoundland, the coyotes, and they have adapted to climate change. They're adapting to mining that's happening in industry and forestry. But if we keep taking and taking and taking, there won't be nothing even for them to feed off or to have their natural migration routes, because it will be disturbed and they have to change. The elders in the community has seen a different pattern in the caribou herds over a number of years that they traveled before, because if you get out in the territory where it's never been touched, you can see caribou trails that are indented in the marshlands up on top of the bogs. They almost like seep down like 4 feet in the ground. I guess that's their traditional migration route that they keep doing every year. And some of those routes along the way have been lost, and so they have changed up routes. But if you get into areas where there are still traditional routes, you will see the indents in the ground. We had an opportunity to take Parks Canada out in helicopter on the territory, and they can see that for themselves how in-depth the trails were like a highway or a footpath that you would have in your backyard or you use over a number of years gets really worn down, and that's what it was like. So also we did liking studies throughout territory. MFN has over 90% of likings across Canada in their territory. We are finding new boreal field likings and cyno likings every year. We just found another species that may be new, that is still in the lab being tested. So if you come down and if you never seen a liking as here, you will get an opportunity to see. Along with one of my co-workers, we were in an area doing studies on a monitoring program with wildlife and Corner Brook on the abundance of lichens, we had to do a data sheet. A data sheet, you're gonna get like 20 lichens on here on one sheet. We're in one area that only covered about a 10-foot radius, and we were up to 10 sheets, and we were finding more and more. The time we left, we looked back, it looked like a Blair Witch project. There was so much things hanging off the trees, it was like, it was like, all right, that's a bit scary, let's go somewhere else, find a lichen. So, it's unique, it's very nutritious down here for different species, and we got a lot of old growth forest that hasn't been touched. And we're right into a area, if you had to divide Newfoundland into like 3 parts, if you had to go to the south, central, and northern, the moisture content and changes as you travel. So on the south coast, as you know here in St. John's, it's very foggy and wet and damp. So, but we get more trees in it. So, but on the bottom where we are at the south, before and up in central, the moisture content drops off. The higher you go, the drier it gets. So we have a very high abundance of different lichens that we're finding every day. At the professor down from University of Guelph, Faisal, he's looking at blueberries and how blueberries are so big down in Wake First Nations. And the thing he found out from the chief is that the chief told him under the shrubs, where the shrubs that he grows so high off the ground, they go over the blueberry bush and covers the blueberries. And it's moisture under the blueberries are huge. He was pretty impressed by it because he never ever heard of it before, and he figured shrubs were shrubs, no need for them. But they are useful for blueberries. So a lot of the elders within the community would find barrens with a lot of shrub, and you would like pick the blueberries. And over time, when the blueberries were not so plentiful, they would do some traditional burns in areas where they want to bring back the abundance of blueberries. So territory within the Elmwood Reserve, out back on the high country, you will find areas that were traditionally burned over 100 years ago. That's where they burned to bring back blueberries. So in other areas, we did different bird studies as well. We put out bird monitors to capture the different sounds of birds in the area to see what species are there. So we saw we had the blackbird that's on the endangered species list. We identified those within our territory, and we sent off some more audio to Quebec to get checked out to see what other species of bird sounds that is on our monitors for the different bird sounds. So we did also we do pine market studies as well in our territory. We use the ear snag tracks that you see. I got one right here. So we put it on the tree. We did training with Terranova Parks Canada on how to set up the traps and to identify the pine mark. So this is one of the line guardians here that's showing the trap. And over here, we managed to capture a pine mark. Before we put a trail cam up to do this, we've been getting a lot of ear samples, and then kind of when you touch the ear sample, you kind of destroy the DNA of them, and some other fur gets on them that covers that up. So setting it off, we tried to, see if we had pine marking in our territory, but we could never do it. So we said, well, here, let's try another idea. Let's stick up some trail cams. And let's see if we can, capture a point mark. So going through the photos over time, we managed to capture a point mark. So, and that was a good discovery, showing that they're coming back. The indigenous people used to call them tree rats. So when they used to see them in the trees, they never call them point mark, they call them tree rats. So we're finding a whole lot of difference in species within the territory, because we have no big industry or commercial industry down our way, which is nice because we still have all these abundance of species that we're finding, and it's beautiful down there. If you ever get a chance to come down, it would be an honor to take you out and see for yourself, standing here and telling you everything we does and what we see on a day-to-day basis is different than what actually being there. If you actually get out there and experience yourself, you have a whole different perspective on the nature and the beauty of it, instead of listening to this guy talk all the time. So with all our gathering of information we took that and we transferred it to the GIS maps, because we wanted to make sure, we need to go back for a reason, or if somebody wants a domestic or commercial permit, we know it's in areas that have these species, so like the caribou migration, or pine martins, or boreal field liking, or traditional areas. So all that will be taken into effect, because if you interrupt one, you're going to interrupt every other thing within that ecosystem. So we had the caribou and the traditional track grounds with the indigenous people, and they still using the land doing their traditional trapping. And the eastern white pine, camping areas, boreal field lichens, pine martins, songbirds. But that list is growing more. We're even doing, we've got climate stations set up and checking the climate over a full year lag to see what's the difference from year 1, year 2 on climate. Because climate will play a big factor as well in the survival of certain species, not only species at risk, but traditional medicines as well that the First Nations people use and still use today. So this is a overview map of what our findings are that is in there. So the first map I showed you of the territory, this was District 6. This was top rated by Kruger back, I'd say 6 years ago or more. So in agreement with MFN and Kruger, they decide that they're going to get a portion of land closer to their mill that will be more economically feasible for them. And so they set that aside and did not harvest for those reasons, that it was an FMA agreement that the Millway First Nations is doing in the province. So we focus on that area as a priority because it was industry was there, and we did not have any data at the time to see what species was there. But over the last number of years, doing studies in the area, we had identified a very different variety of species and a caribou migration route that went through that zone. So this one gives you the caribou study area within the territory. And when the industry was there, this shows that how their migration route went right through their FMA agreement area. So over in this area right here, the red dot is the calving grounds. And that is on Middle Ridge within the Bay North Wilderness area. So this is where all the animals go to have their young for that summer. So we found that there was 2 migration routes that was happening with the caribou. And then the last number of years, we found that there was 3, actually. So this map has to be updated because now there's a 3rd migration route that's happening. So we found that some of the caribou migrated northwest, going across the Baby Spear Highway. If you come down the Baby Spear Highway along Eagles Road in late fall and early spring, you will see caribou migrating across the highway in numbers of like 500. They will be traveling back across over to the winter grounds, as the chief was saying, mating grounds. So they are having 2 routes. One is heading south and then heading across and going down, and one is heading up and heading down. But they all come together on the other side of True Hill. So over on the other side of True Hill, over on the western side of the interior, they also meeting up with the Great River herd. So the Great River herd is mixing with the Middle Ridge herd. So, and then there's another herd that is heading south. That was a very small group of animals. It was only at like 150 about 5 years ago. Now it's up to like 500. If you go down at the same period of time when they're migrating up to the calving grounds, you can see the barns. It's like it's moving. You can go stand in the middle part of the herd and they just go right on by. It's that many caribou there. And the next one below, this one shows all the trappers' trapping grounds. So MFN's traditional trappers are still using the land for trapping. There's not a whole lot of money in furs these days, but it's still something, it's their tradition, and they're still doing it and keeping it alive today. We still have over 50 active trappers within the community, and some of the young are doing it as well. So they're getting into what their fathers are doing or what their grandfathers are doing, and they're passing on that knowledge to them as traditional trappers and teaching them ways how the animals act on the land, their behavior, and how to survive on the land, and only taking what you need. And we had a team of kids in here before showing them how to work together as a team, not individual. Because if you work on your own, 9 out of 10 chances you're not going to survive. So as I mentioned, with the white pines, we've been finding a lot of abundance of white pine throughout the territory. And their tower is right over the other old growth forest trees, humongous, so you're going to get them up to almost like 30 feet tall or more. And they're really huge. And so hopefully within the months to come, we'll have the biggest pond in Newfoundland. So on the bottom, on the next map, it shows that these are the traditional trapper's cabin that's out here. On this side of the highway, on the east side, and there's something just over this way a little farther on the map. And that's the chief's traditional track ground right here in Koi Pond. And over farther, it's Andy Joe's, Billy Joe's, and several more throughout the territory on the south. So there's over 50 active trappers that's still trapping beaver, and otter, and mink, and everything. So still being used, the territory, every day. I have a group of land guardians out on the land that is doing their studies now with looking at different species of lichens, bird monitoring, mammals, and making sure people are respecting the land when they do go out doing their hunting or harvesting of their own. So this is a map, a GIS map of some of the findings of liking. This map has been upgraded again as we found more lichens throughout the area, and we may have a new liking that's on the island. So that's going to be pretty interesting when it comes back from the lab to know what kind of species of liking we're looking at now and what other species are going to be here when we do further research. In the summertime, it's kind of hard to get farther out on the land because there's no roads. Only one way you're going to get out there is either you got dropped off by a helicopter or you're going to walk for days on end. So our plan is to set up camps throughout the territory. That when the land guardians do go out, they will be able to stay in the camps in the territory by week's ends. So instead of going out and trying to get back to back and focusing more on wintertime, because wintertime is more easier to access a wider area by SKU. But with the winters we've been having lately, it kind of makes it difficult to do so. But we're trying to come up with new ideas all the time to figure out how to get out there to do further studies and how we're attracting more partners, whether it be University of MUN, Parks Canada, CPAWS, or any other organizations that has some other scientific reasons or knowledge that they would like to share or have into training or look at in their territory. So we're open to that perspective of sharing our knowledge of the land and with you, and you sharing your knowledge of your Western science with us. So two of them go together because two of them can't survive without each other in this day and age. So we got into doing some marine work. So the federal government, DFO, had a little block of funding that was available last year for areas. They had 6 areas throughout 7 areas picked out throughout the province to do marine protected areas. And one area it fell right in where the GEOG Reserve is, right here on the south coast. So we wanted to do our own marine areas, so they funded us. So we started looking at areas that was very significant to GEOG First Nations. Give you an idea of what coasts we are looking at, because we need a territory. The territory covers 2.5 million hectares and 2,500 kilometers of coastline. So we're looking at the coastline from here right up to just on the other side of Virgil. The territory goes up and over and back down around. So we're looking at a 2,500 kilometer coastline on areas that may have areas where the First Nations people that migrated along the south coast. In Bay North Wilderness area, you may know that there is a big cross up on the mountain on the hill that was put there by First Nations people. It's a sacred area that people had went to worship, and it's still there. You can there's a trail that goes up over the mountain that takes you up to Bay North Wilderness Cross. Across from Bay North is a place called Indian Point. Indian Point was a place that was inhabited by First Nations. If you go there, it still has some remnants of fire pits that was in the ground and poles on the ground that where they were before we it's up in this area right here in Bay North, before we moved into where we are now, which is Con River, Melwood First Nations. So along the coastline, there was a lot of history for Melwood as well. And we always looked on the land for certain, species, or we've been there, but also the coastline has to be looked at as well, because along the cliffs and caves, there may be like hieroglyphics that's there that shows how long the First Nations people have been here in Newfoundland. So this is some of the coastline that we looked at throughout our bay that we're looking at being marine protected areas. But also to look and talk with other communities along the coastline that hold a lot of history for them as well, non-Indigenous communities, because they have a lot of history that they want to look at as well to the protected areas that we see that they want. So it's working with other communities, not only the Indigenous community, but the non-Indigenous communities on the areas that they want to see. So also we did a traditional ecological knowledge transfer with the students in education. So we took the kids out on the land for 7 days. We traveled over 500 kilometers on the land. We traveled down the west country to central to eastern. So it was a nice journey. Kids learned a lot. So this was our first day on the west country. We had Rich Parsons, who was working with Canyon at the time. He did the Western Science part, and I did the traditional part, along with the chief and our traditional guide, telling them of areas of significance and why they were, because of their grandfathers and their ancestors that have been there. In the area out on the west coast, up in the middle part of the territory, is called a place, Trudeau Rock. Trudeau Rock is a rock that is over 10 feet high, and over the base of it has got to be over 40 feet. You can actually walk through the rock like a wigwam. What the story goes is that when the Mi'kmaq were out on the west coast trapping, they would, hear who was coming home, he would leave messages on birchwood for the other trapper. When they get to the rock, it would be their gathering point. So they would leave a note there, whether they needed something at home, or send a message home to their families, letting them know that they're okay. So, and then the person that would come back, would leave a note saying that we would be back on such and such a day. And then when they would come back, they would meet there, and then they would just sit up and share stories and tell about their families, home, and how their trapping season was going. But they never, ever trapped on one another's trap ground out of respect for each other. So there was a line that they would not cross, because that was your buddy's track ground, and this is your track ground. You do not pick from them. So that was a very special spot. So on our journey here, we start to get back into central Newfoundland, and with the kids, showing them how their ancestors traveled over the country from east to west. Not by scooters, but to give them an idea of how far they had to travel by walking with the big bundles on their back. So it was nice. The little kid had this view on the side. Man, I didn't even think he was going to get 10 feet. He had it tied up with barbed wire, duct tape, you name it. He hit a bumpy seat, come on, and they'll go back on. Like, he's not going to get nowhere. That was the only scooter that didn't break down. How could that be here? So anyway, so on on our journey, we entered into the Bay North Wilderness area. We went to Mount Sylvester, it's the biggest mountain down in the southern central Newfoundland. That we went and we left tobacco offering in Great Cloth for our ancestors. And then we left that. We traveled out to the chief's cabin on just about 20 kilometers from the Otway First Nations. Chief taught him about the Swift Lodge and the 7 steps in the Swift Lodge, and he taught him patience. And so how he done that was very interesting. He put up a skidoo race. The kids were gone nuts. Like you're gonna tell you tell a 14, 13-year-old we're going to skidoo race. And they're down beating their machines, getting ready to rock and roll. And he said, well, this race is different. And they all stopped and said, what do you mean? Well, this race is about patience. And well, how we gonna do it, he told them, is that I got $20. You can go the slowest, wins the $20. So the kids are going, some will go hell with this, so you're gone. The kid with the broken skidoo, he bloody won. So he had the most patience, and he won $20. So I showed him patience and how you can't leave your buddy behind or leave your buddy because you got a fast machine and you work together as a team as one unit. So that was pretty good. I thought that was a learning point for us. Yo, that's $20. Boom, get $20. So just to summarize what this report was, it's doing looking at the traditional monkey trapping grounds, woodland caribou migration that the Otway First Nations used over all their lives that were passed down from their ancestors. So we did looking at medicine plants, what medicine plants are within our territory. So we're doing data analysis on them, working with the universities as well to find out why certain boreal lichens or any lichen are more plentiful in areas where there are certain medicine plants, or like Labrador tea birds. Like we finding a lot of lichens here may not be 10 feet away from them. Why is that? Because the ecosystem changes that much from here to there. So we're looking at different cyno-lichens as well. So we're looking at different song birds and species, also migratory birds as well with the marine work. We're doing GIS mapping, productive and non-productive forests, special places of interest like Trudeau Rock, Mount Sylvester, old wigwams along the rivers or in the interior. We're looking at biodiversity on each area we visit. We're looking at climate change. Climate change is playing a big role in everybody's life today. And we're looking at now getting into coastal marine work. We're looking at areas that would have a lot of heel grass and the heels that the First Nations been doing over a number of years. You still heel spirit today. If you come down in the night, in the evening time, in the summertime, you will see little lights along the shoreline that's going along. That is people from home using the traditional heel spirit, capturing heels, spraying the heels in the nighttime. When it was back in the days when there was no flashlights or lanterns, they would use birch rime torches. You would wrap birch rime around, tie it with roots, tie more around, tie it, and then you have a big torch. So you would light it, you would stick it in front of the canoe as you go along with your traditional heel spear that was made from either a caribou jaw or a moose jaw with a sharp bone sticking in the middle that would puncture the heel. It goes in past lips that he can't get back out. That's how they did it. And also they did wintertime healing, where they knew where the heels would go down into the soft bottoms. They would go and cut holes in ice and find little holes. They would dig down so far until they get away from the frogs, and then they would spear down in the mud and haul out the heels. So we're looking at the different marine animals that we have. So we have traditionally captured salmon, the Atlantic salmon. We have one of the richest salmon rivers on the south coast. Back in its day, the last 5 years, the river